Hi, my name is Yogesh Giandani and you're watching part 1 of the cloud computing tutorial series. Before we start talking about cloud computing, it is important to understand how technology vendors and service providers have created solutions for the problems faced by businesses today. Today, businesses are in the jet age where they have to report quarterly results where various parameters like how the business is growing, how their products and services are performing better, what are the things they are doing to keep ahead of the competition, and finally how they are able to reduce costs which impacts their profitability. Let's understand how in the past this was achieved. So we started with the agricultural age where man utilized himself, then utilized the animals, and then finally utilized machines to do the seeding, genetically modified crops, etc. So what essentially they achieved was doing more at a lesser cost. If we moved from there to the industrial age, let's take an example of a car. So companies used to manufacture cars, bigger cars, or today they manufacture hybrid, fuel efficient, or even the smallest car in the world, which is the Tata Nano. So the idea is to give more for a price which the customer is willing to buy. So if we move further on to the computing age, which is the number 3 which you're seeing on the slide, essentially what was achieved was the mainframe which was there in the 1960s was only affordable to a few organizations, and when the PC was born it was affordable to many organizations. So it ties back to where the focus has always been in the businesses to how to grow the business, how to stay ahead of the competition, deliver better performance at the lower cost. Technology has its own laws, and one of the laws is the Moore's law, which states that the number of transistors inside a processor will only keep on doubling every year. So right from 1970s, where the first Intel microprocessor, the 4004, was born, which had a few thousand transistors inside the chip, to a few billion today in the dual core or the core 2 duo processors, what we're seeing. Technology has been keeping moving up and up, giving more density, more power at a lower cost. So if you bought a 386 processor, let's say in 1985, it would have probably costed you more than what you pay for the Core 2 Duo today. So we have been seeing many inventions, and one of the inventions by man is the car. So the car potentially could be manufactured by the company, which each and every component being manufactured by the company, or they outtask some of these components. So they say, okay, this is what I can give it to you, please manufacture the tires for me, please manufacture the brakes for me, and I will assemble the car and sell it. Or they could completely outsource this, saying that okay, here is the car model, here is the specification, please go ahead and buy the products from wherever. So this is what I want the car to have, so you, Mr. XYZ company, please build it for us and we will brand it as our own. So innovation is basically taking invention to the next level. So from the time when you invent it, you take it to a certain scale, and once you are able to manage the scale, you say, okay, these are the tasks which are probably not core to our business, these are not mission critical, so you offload it. An example of this is the courier industry, which looked at what the postal agencies essentially did, and they realized that the postal agency treated everybody the same, or they had very few services which they offered. So what they did is they repackaged the entire thing. They gave various services like the same day service, the next day service, giving a fast reliable service, or let's say a pre 9 or pre 10 a.m. or 12 noon service, all at competitive rates. Even giving things like online bookings, even giving envelopes to their customers. So the customers, they didn't even have to look at the envelopes. Now when they did this, they were able to charge a premium which was far higher than what the postal agencies did. So innovation is essentially what has been driving manpower to reduce the costs and be able to offer greater and greater services. Now let's focus at the computing evolution. Here on this slide we see 3 generations of computing. starting with the mainframe era, where a huge computer essentially did everything from processing, saving, managing the clients, etc. Where the dumb clients had only the keyboard and the CRT. So the dumb clients would punch in some code, which was executed on the mainframe, and the response was thrown back onto the screen of the dumb terminal. So as the processors became better, as people moved out of the vacuum diodes into processors, we saw the advent of the PC, which was the second generation. So organizations could afford the PC, which allowed them to store their paperwork onto the disk, thereby reducing the amount of paperwork which they had. So that was the phase one. And phase two, what we saw was essentially bringing all these PCs together and making them talk, which was essentially the client server computing, where you took a big PC and turned it as a server, and smaller PCs would essentially do the client job. Now, the IBM mainframe connected to the terminals using serial connectivity, which was far slower with speeds of a few kbps, to the client server, which works on Ethernet or the other mechanisms at a speed of few Mbps, or of course the Gbps as we are seeing today. Let us look at the various protocols which allowed them to connect to each other. So organizations, when they started working, they started connecting their offices internally using token ring, ARCnet or FDDI, and of course today the universal protocol which gets used across the world is Ethernet, which links up the local area networks. The need for connecting their offices together, so the branch office to the head office or the remote offices together, brought the wide area network in picture. So where they used expensive connectivity using lease lines or dial-up from the phone company. That gave an idea for the second generation of service providers to come up with networks which they built, and they allowed customers to share their networks and offer them virtual private networks over Frame or ATM. Just a few years ago, what was also happening was the Defense Advanced Research Projects agencies, which is the DARPA of US, essentially came up with an idea of saying, okay, let's build a huge network which would connect almost every educational and research institution out there and allow them to share information for common good. Initially, it was for the defense projects, but the defense agencies moved out later, so the DARPA became ARPA, and the protocol which used to run this network was TCP/IP. Now, of course, one of the things which, if you look at it, is the important thing, which is the storage. So as people started utilizing networks, started utilizing computing, it was imperative for them to store information. So storage was initially on tapes, which was taking the backup locally using something like a direct attached storage, the DAS, or taking the backup offsite. So initially it meant was taking the tapes here and moving them physically to a different location, what banks did, so that if anything happens to this branch, you are at least protected. You can actually get the backup online, and the customers can start utilizing the network again. So the idea of the offsite backup was to prevent the disaster. As storage grew, we are seeing the network attached storage. So you are utilizing servers, which essentially could do simple thing like a file transfer protocol and store stuff on the NAS or the storage area network by utilizing a different protocol like an FCIP to store data onto storage area networks which were connected onto a different device. So essentially, if you look at it, this is what is there in most of the network, the LAN, WAN and storage. Now, as TCP/IP has become more popular, there were a lot of protocols which were there out there which died their natural death, and TCP/IP succeeded. And because TCP/IP is open, it doesn't rely on any specific LAN or WAN media, it became so popular that it created the fourth generation of computing. So the ARPA, what we saw on the previous slide, became the internet of today, what we know, which allows everybody to be connected. Now, the internet wasn't very popular till a certain point of time, till the browser was invented. So NCSA created the first browser, which was the Mosaic, and Netscape took that forward and created a commercial version of it. So they started selling the Netscape Navigator. So you ended up paying $60 for a browser. And Microsoft came up with their free browser, Internet Explorer, which they bundled with the operating system. Now, what this essentially did, it pushed a lot of applications out there, right from email, doing chat, doing a search with Yahoo, and a couple of others. So this pushed people to go and get the IP addresses to connect to the internet. So if you see that man standing up there, standing on a counter trying to get an IPv4 address, essentially they went and they said, okay, we want to get IP addresses, and the world started getting increasingly connected. Along with this, there were many enablers of technology in the 21st century, and let's see some of those. So here are some of the enablers of the last decade which have changed our lives. So taking a quote from Cisco, which said that the internet will change the way we live, work, play, and learn. All these devices have essentially changed the way we are doing each of these. So Moore's law is applied to each area of technology, and we are seeing things becoming faster, smaller, and better. So the cell phone, which used to be a bigger device, is now coming within your palm, and you can do far more things which was possible 10 years ago. So you can do email, you can probably surf the net, you can do whatever possible with your PC, with your cell phone. A USB stick can potentially hold what tons of floppy drives couldn't. Or a Wi-Fi or a cellular device can allow you to keep connected while you are in motion. Similarly, the social networking allows you to share information within your friends, or go to Wikipedia and get the latest information, or utilize the power of the data which has been created over many years. Organizations end up turning the business intelligence on top of them, which aids them to make decisions. Again, if you look at the analytics, which is run by Google, Yahoo, etc., that helps them to do user-specific advertisements to give the power to the business to go and reduce the overall marketing costs. Now, businesses have learned how to extract the power of internet over the last decade, and let's see some of the areas which have benefited them. Now, one of the biggest benefits was the businesses came up in 2000 and they started purchasing domain names. At one point of time, there were people who were just going and purchasing domain names which belonged to somebody else and then selling them to the original owner. So Coke would end up paying something like millions of dollars just to get back their domain name. And then they would put up static web pages which displayed what information the business did, how to contact them, etc., which was the Web 1.0. This proved to be a good marketing tool, and it gave them the reach not just locally but globally. The second phase was obviously to get more intimate with the customer, getting to do the e-commerce or the electronic commerce. So instead of doing paperwork, they would take orders online, execute them online, and the deliveries would happen. So companies like Cisco typically take orders online, execute them online, and they do only e-commerce today. They don't do any paperwork. This cuts down the processing time, movement of paper. With the collaborative tools, it helps the customers to get products at a far lower cost. If you look at banks, banks were able to do the same thing. They rushed to internet banking, and customers were able to reduce the cost of a transaction. So they would interact on the internet and they would virtually get the services for zero cost what they would require to pay at the branch. And then banks also reduced the number of outlets as well, so they were actually more profitable. Looking at the retail world, Amazon and eBay are excellent examples where businesses is done without an outlet. With mobile becoming the universal tool for everyone, internet on the mobile has led to greater penetration, and businesses have realized how this impacts them and helps them to become more competitive, create more better products, and reduce the cost. Thus, IT, which was a support function, became a mainline function.